Where were you last Thursday?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh yeah? Well, we have evidence, punk.
Show him the evidence.
Never seen these before.
Well, have you seen this one?
No, but your mom has.
He's not budging. Ask him another question.
What I have for breakfast this morning?
I need to talk to my lawyer.
We have video evidence. Show him, buddy.
With pleasure.
Welcome back to another episode of Franky D Crafter. This week, we'll be working on a mat. All you need for this project is canvas, caulk, and some paints. And as you can tell, you want to iron the canvas to make sure it's nice and smooth. The ones I made earlier that you've seen in the port town are a little bit different than this one. In this one, when I apply the caulk, I'm making a little bit thinner. I noticed that when I started kind of handling the other mats in a rough way, the parts where there was a thicker amount of caulk actually got damaged. And it's not damaged enough for me to say, oh, this looks horrible, but it is noticeable. So I'm gonna test out and check out what it's like if I put a thinner coat of caulk. The downside of that is that I don't get a lot of texture on the mat. So what I'm gonna look at is if I have a place to store it, that I can just store them flat, I might just do textures on most of them. But if you don't have that space where you can store them flat, I advise you put the layer of caulk as thin as possible. I try to apply some texture to the mat right off the start, but I can tell it's not gonna look as good as the first ones I did. But it does come with its downside. Either you make it look slightly better and make it a little bit more fragile, or you make it tougher but you don't get as much detail. Make sure it completely dries before continuing. You should have probably cut the mat to the size you wanted it to from the start, but I had a huge canvas that I just planned to go through today, so I figured why not do it this way. When painting something like this, I don't mind getting messy. As you can tell here, I'm kind of just all over the place with it. I hope this doesn't come back and bite me in the butt. I'll make sure to start with a sort of dark blue, and I make sure to get it everywhere, even under the texture. I start to apply the lighter blue, but I want to take advantage of the texture on the mat, so I apply it like a dry brush. I make sure I don't get full coverage, and I make sure to highlight the things that I sort of want to be the waves. At some point, I just start tapping on the mat, just to make sure that my lighter blue is scattered around the whole thing. Using the same technique as before, this time at the white. As you can tell, I went a little bit heavier on the paint on some parts. That was a little bit of a mistake, but I come back and fix it later. With a smaller brush, I start picking out my waves. Now, if I was using the other technique, where I applied the caulk a little bit heavier, it's easier to texture the waves into the design, but like I said, they are a little bit fragile. I mean, I was slamming the mats around, so who knows, maybe they'll last longer if you weren't doing that. But just to be safe, I made it all thin and I painted the design instead of texturing it. Now from here I start working my way backwards again. The middle blue we use, we're gonna use it to bring balance to the white. And now that you picked out your waves, you wanna usually add it right before the end of your waves. So right behind the white. This is where I bring a more vibrant blue. As you can tell, I'm not putting a lot of effort into blending the colors together. something you gotta realize about blue is that blues tend to blend with each other regardless. They're just like that. I don't remember why, I forgot. If anybody that took color theory remembers why this is, let me know in the comment section below. On to the last step, contrast. Now, there's a reason why a lot of what I make looks cartoony, and this step right here will explain why. I tend to make things exaggerated, and how do you do that? By adding a lot of contrast. For this step, you want to pick out a blue that's dark, but not dark enough to the point where it looks purple or black. And you want to start applying them to the base of the waves, and then a little bit on the front to make sure that your white pops really well. All I need to do now is just cut off the ends, the edges, make it look nice and smooth, and this is ready to be put on a table. And this is pretty much it. If you have any questions about how I did any of this, post your questions in the comment section below. I know I'm not the best at explaining what I do, which is weird. Why would I start a tutorial video about this? But I still love doing it, and I want people to make their own things, you know? This was super fast, super easy. The longest step on this was just letting the caulk dry, and I swear this was like a steal basically on how cheap you can make this. This was like a steal basically. This was like a steal basically.
What do you have to say for yourself?
That wasn't me.
Oh yeah? Show me your hands.
You better catch these hands.
Go to jail!
Go to jail!
Thank you very much again for watching this episode of Franky D Crafter. Subscribe, like, comment. Catch you on the flippity side.